Welcome to Short Focus Film Festival 2025 Q&A sessions. In these sessions, we sit down with the creators of the films that we screen throughout the festival. This afternoon, we're lucky to have with us Laura Calzada, who is the director of Tainted by the Visual. Tainted by the Visual is the third film screening in Programme 1 of Short Focus 2025. Programme 1 screens on the 13th of September 2025 at Close Up Cinema at 2 o'clock, and also for the duration of the festival from the 13th to the 21st of September online. Laura, welcome to Short Focus Film Festival 2025. It's great to have you with us and speaking about your film. So thank you so much. It's a really fascinating documentary about sound artist Andy Slater and his experience of visual impairment. The film discusses, how sound shapes both his work and his everyday life. Could you just tell us a little bit more about Andy and how you first came across his story?
Yeah, so it's so strange because I've been working on this film about him and with him, and I've still never met him in real life. Even though it feels like I know him quite well now. When I decided I wanted to make this film about the topic of how going through visual impairment or visual changes in your life affects the way you hear, I was researching online different artists that might be interesting to talk to. And I found pretty immediately Andy's website, and I was reading about him and everything he would say, and the way he writes and the way he talks was so, it was just like, I have to talk to this guy. And so we reached out to him, and he's been great. We had a call to get to know each other, and he was immediately interested and happy to come on board as the contributor, and also as a sort of guide in how to make it a more accessible experience, not just a film, because obviously it's a film, so it would be a visual medium, but how to make it both something that seeing people and visually impaired people could enjoy. So it's been great collaborating with him in that sense as well.
Awesome. What is it about your own maybe style of filmmaking, maybe your own preoccupations that made you, I suppose, kind of drawn to telling his story as well? What is it about kind of the way that you make films and your interests that really kind of drew you to that story?
So when I was growing up, I had a lot of problems with my ear. I've had several surgeries, and throughout my childhood, it was always doctors telling me you probably lose your hearing at some point. And thankfully I did not, and my hearing is fine. But this whole process did give me a really big appreciation for sound and hearing. And I think, so alongside that, growing up, there were several important figures in my life who were blind or visually impaired. And I've always been interested in how kind of those two things intersect, and how that different experience of the world would influence the way people hear. And so I think, honestly, I think genuine curiosity about that experience is what made me want to make this film. And I think for me, it was an opportunity to get to know a different point of view that's very different from my own, and to try to understand it through filmmaking, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I mean, portraying an experience as individual and subjective as Andy's on screen is obviously incredibly difficult. In your press notes, you're clear that the film isn't an attempt at direct representation of visual impairment or blindness. Why was that important for you?
That was very important. And when I decided I wanted to make this film, and I was talking to Andy about it, I was kind of conflicted about the first person approach that we were thinking of taking, because I am not visually impaired, and I have never gone through any kind of visual impairment. So I said to Andy, is it ethical to make a film in this way? And he said, the advice he gave us was like, be transparent about that. Like, don't try to claim that you are doing something you're not. If you just want to understand and interpret the world, then say that. Just don't claim that this is what blindness looks like, because even if I did know, even if I had gone through a process of visual impairment, I wouldn't know what that would be like for Andy. There's no way one can like completely put yourself in someone else's shoes like that. You can, or the way I see it, all you can try to do is like be empathic and understand. And so that's what he said. He said, be upfront and straightforward and transparent about that. And because I think what has been a little bit of a problem in some other cases of attempts that there have been before is when people have said, this is what blindness looks like. And obviously you can't do that, even if it looks that way for one person. It's such a, like you were saying, such an individual and subjective experience that, yeah, so we just wanted to show our attempt at understanding and our interpretation of our conversation with Andy, and hope that it be a way to start thinking about a different experience and a different way to experience the world, and a different way of hearing and listening.
It's interesting that you say that. You know, from that response, it sounds as though in some ways actually like that gave you more freedom to try and, you know, present this story. But you know, what were the challenges in finding the right visual language to convey Andy's commentary?
Yes, and you're absolutely right. It did give us more freedom. I think, so to tell you a little bit about our process, we started from a long interview conversation we had with Andy, where we talked about both how his vision changed throughout his life and how that influenced his hearing. And through his visual descriptions, those were what we took as our kind of starting point for what, if I'm hearing this, what does this look like in my brain? And so when it came to filming, we had all of those descriptions printed out and like on the walls of the studio. And it was like, okay, let's think of materials, effects, or things that like to us, this sounds like. And we had, pre-production was basically trying to research different techniques that created some of those things that reminded us and made us think that maybe this is what this could look like. And on the day of the shoot, we had, we called it a materials buffet. And it was a process of really experimentation and trying to like, oh, this is starting to look like the floating eye worms that he was talking about. Wait, try to add this or try to add that. And it was honestly a really organic and collaborative process between all of us in trying to like put on our Andy shoes as much as we could and try to see how I mean, I say how close we could get, but we will never know if we got any close or not. It probably doesn't anything like what he experiences, but now you know what we think it might look like.
Yeah, no, I imagine that, you know, language would play a really huge role really in how things are described and understood. You know, so much is in how he's able to convey his experience just through speaking as well as through sound. So yeah, really interesting that you kind of talked about, you know, the words, the descriptions he used, and how that's kind of linking with your own kind of vision or your experience, and how to kind of then, you know, relay that visually as well. Do you think that language is a really important part of Andy's own art as well, and I suppose ultimately the way the film is instructed as well?
I think maybe that's a good question for Andy. I'm not sure if I can answer how important language is in his art, although I'd be interested in hearing what he has to say about it. In terms of the film, it was very important because, like you say, like language is kind of the way we have to express and share our individual experience with others, and on the other end how we receive that, and how we, I guess on top of that layer of language, we can project through our own experiences and our own what we know, what we imagine from those descriptions. So it played a huge role, and really all we had to guide us were Andy's words. And so yeah, language was kind of the basis of how we created everything that you see on screen. And the only part that we can say is true to Andy's experience is the words you hear him say, because that is actually coming from him. That is actually his experience. So I think language is the tool we have to understand, or one of the biggest tools we have as humans to understand each other and understand each other's experiences.
And what was the actual filmmaking process like then, both in terms of shooting and editing? Obviously, you had the basis there with his commentary, the language he was providing you. But what was the actual filmmaking process like, and how long did everything take to bring together?
So the filmmaking process, we had it was a very short actual shoot, but the pre-production and post-production were very long. We did a lot of, before filming, we did a lot of research on different testimonies from different people who, blind artists and other blind people, to understand some more perspectives. Even though we wanted to look at Andy's perspective, it was good to gain like a general awareness of the broader scope. And then once we had Andy's interview, there was a long process of research. Like I was saying, how could we achieve this description that he's giving us with the tools of film that we have? So there was a long research process there. I was very collaborative with the visual team and the practical effects team. And then the actual shoot was about, I think it was 4 days that we had, where it was really a process of experimentation and organic. Like, okay, we've researched all these techniques that we can put on top of these descriptions. How does everything come together in front of the camera? And it was really like a layering of different effects, and almost everything you see, except for one shot in the film, that the one of the couch where you see all the dots. Except for that shot, everything else was done in camera. Were practical effects. Like we didn't use special effects. It was all us in the studio, layering different materials, different techniques on top of each other to try to create the visuals that our interpretation of Andy's descriptions. How
does it work in terms of Andy's involvement in shaping the visual choices that you make then? I mean, does he have a direct influence in maybe the way the film looks and feels? And how do you maybe know when you've landed on something that is the closest to what he's trying to describe? Yeah,
well, with that last thought, we will never know, I think, if we got any close or not, because it's not like we can check, you know. But what we did do after we had a draft of the film was write this long document of every so we had every line in the film that he says, and next to it a written visual description of the visual that we had paired with that voiceover, if that makes sense. So we had a full length visual description of the whole film that we sent to him, and he sort of from there gave us. He listened to the film and he read our descriptions, and he gave us his notes, and mostly that was in terms of A, sound, and B, accessibility. He suggested that we had the credits voiced over, and same with the disclaimer in the beginning of the film. And yeah, but we will never know. It was probably, like I said, it is not close at all to what Andy experiences, because we can't have that experience. But that's kind of how that process and relationship worked.
Well, yeah, it's a fantastic collaboration, a real feat, really, of experimentation in visual language. So yeah, we really love the film, and we're very happy to have that as part of the festival this year. Finally, will you be collaborating at all with Andy on anything else, or can you, if not, give us any details on anything that you're working on next? Yeah, of course.
Currently, I don't have another project that I'm working on with Andy, but I would love to work with him in the future. I think because film and sound are so interconnected, and I'm such a fan of his work. And if you haven't already, you should check out, he has a lot of his sound art on Spotify. His album Unseen Reheard is absolutely fantastic. So I would love to work with him in the future, and so hopefully that does happen eventually. At the moment, I am working on my first feature documentary on the topic of energy, and I also work as an editor in documentary, and I'm currently simultaneously editing a film about cancer. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm up to at the moment.
Excellent. We really look forward to seeing what you are working on next. So do keep in touch. Let us know when those projects are wrapped up, and hopefully we can take a look at those as well. But Laura, thank you again so much for joining me and for being part of Short Focus Film Festival 2025. We wish you the best of luck in this festival and on the rest of the festival circuit as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It was great.